Good morning. You're here for another episode of The VUU. I'm Meg Riley, today in Beltsville, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., here for the CLF board meeting today. And I'm joined by my cohorts. Want to introduce yourself, y'all?
Hi, I'm Joanna Fontaine Crawford, and I am here in still hot Austin, Texas.
I'm Aisha Hauser, and I'm in cooling Seattle, Washington, but it is bright and sunny.
And behind that chalice, we have Slim Moon on tech. Today, Latifa Woodhouse will be joining us. She is unfortunately having some tech issues, and so she'll be getting here as she's able. We're excited to have her here, but meanwhile, my gosh, there's stuff going on everywhere. Let's talk about Charlotte. Let's just say, I'll start by saying I'm really proud of our colleagues, Jay and Robin and the others who are showing up. And my usual, don't believe the news. You know, I'm listening to Harry Potter on tape right now, and the media in Harry Potter is teaching kids don't believe the media. And I'm really glad for that. They're always saying Sirius Black is evil, and yet we know he's this, you know, wonderful guy. And so I think this is really good training for kids. This is good subversive training for them. Don't believe the media. The teachers aren't necessarily trying to teach you anything, things that kids know anyway. But, you know, it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking to watch the human collateral. And let us hope. I just saw here in the hotel that they say the dash cam video is going to be shared with a family. Maybe that will help. We'll see.
Right. And what have you heard any news this morning? I was following on Twitter last night, and the last that I was hearing was about the person who had been shot last night during the protest. I saw some real. The police were saying this was one citizen shooting another citizen, and there were other people who were saying, "No, I was right there. This was an officer who shot." Has anything come out about that?
Just people arguing is all I've seen. And, you know, I think that's what's so hard about these situations is I really, when I see news that I feel like more activists are getting featured than used to, but still the authority is always handed to the police, even though we have literally hundreds of really clear examples of them manufacturing stories and evidence. And so
right, that was one of the other big stories this week, right? Was it in Chicago where it came out that there were just multiple cases of what was it, of officers throwing down a gun or planting a gun? Oh,
I mean, it's literally, we have thousands and thousands of incidences. And I was glad, you know, one of the presidential candidates, I wonder which one, spoke out and said this is unacceptable, you know, and because I feel like the Justice Department stepping in has helped some and hopefully will continue to help. And the thing I think that's important, I wrote a blog this morning that I haven't posted yet, but is about those of us who aren't in physical danger from this, just spinning our wheels can just grind the whole story down more. And there is such clear action that can be taken wherever we are to make this stop. And DeRay McKesson has a great website. The president, the Justice Department has a great website. And so I really hope that our congregations are looking at how to impact change. I noticed this morning that one of our ministers said she was about to go to a community forum on police community relations and just said, I can't do it. It's going to be a PR fest, and I'm not willing to do that anymore. And Aisha, you always have such a unique perspective on all of this with your family and everything. How is it for you to look at all this?
Yeah, it's still depressing. And actually knowing kind of my husband is in law enforcement, knowing the other side of it is not better, because what is clear is how entrenched the sides are, the fact that there's sides. And that's the part that is really, really more than problematic. There was a story here in Seattle of Seattle's trying to build this multi-million-dollar facility, a new police facility. And so the police, in their effort to reach out to people and give information about this, invited NAACP, civil rights leaders, folks to the existing facility. And this Black woman on NPR was report. She said what was really astonishing was the cluelessness of the entire event. So the first thing they do, she said, the first thing they do is bring out riot gear and say, we need more rooms, a bigger space for this riot gear. Now, she said he's talking to mostly Black people. Then they go to the shooting range, and he said, we don't have enough room to practice shooting at long distances. Now, she said it was astonishing that now the people who are in the room are thinking, you're going to practice shooting people who look like me. And so the interviewer said to her, well, that sounds like bad PR. She said, no, it wasn't about bad PR. This is what they thought this was okay, and that speaks to a bigger fundamental problem. And that's the deep-rooted problem here, is that when you have a group of people who think they're right, and I mean, I use the term right in a not even a really helpful way, but they thought this was perfectly reasonable, that they were going to show Black people and people from the NAACP, civil rights leaders, that this is why they need a bigger police bunker. And it just speaks to, and that's the chasm. And we've had conversations about this. I've met many of my husband's colleagues over the last 18 years. And there's just a fundamental divide that I don't know. I think the one answer, and I said this to a white cop in Bellevue, I said, we don't, if you don't have any friends who are people of color that are you don't have a meaningful friendship or relationship, meaningful, not I say hello to you because you're in the cubicle next to me. It is very easy to keep those people in another category. Does that make sense? And I think we've been so segregated. We've never really desegregated, that these problems have just gotten worse.
And of course, my obsession, the police union contracts, that really, things like people get upset because they're always suspended with pay. That's in their union contract. That's not going to change unless the union contracts change, or they have 3 days to come up with their story before they're interviewed. That's in their contract, that they get to have that. So I think it needs to be addressed from so many directions. But I'm proud of the resistance. I watch it, and I don't watch the mainstream news much, but when I have just caught glimpses of it, because I am in a hotel right now, it just makes me think of Minneapolis and the people who know that they're putting their lives on the line themselves, who are still resisting. That is a very healthy human response. And I think to the extent that we try to squelch that and say, oh, calm down, we are trying to squelch humanity. And so I'm really proud that Unitarian Universalists are out there. Speaking of Unitarian Universalists being out there, I think we all watched the movie about the Sharps this week that Artemis Jakowski came and talked about last week. And I'm curious if seeing it, I had seen an earlier iteration before Ken Burns got his hands on it. And I have to say it was better. I mean, it's good. It was good before, but you could, I couldn't tell you because I'm not a film student, but just visually it was a lot sharper.
Edgier?
I couldn't tell you what's different. It just held together better. But, I just was so sitting with, I think we all were, the similarities between now. I think the scene that really just kind of undid me was when they went back home and everyone was talking about baseball.
Right.
And I thought, that's how it felt when I went home from the 4th precinct. I didn't have to take a ship. I just drove across to my city. And
this week, like all of the news about Brad and Angelina, and it has felt like this. Are we in two different realities?
Oh, no, sit down too. Okay.
I see you there.
Yes.
Hey, Latifa.
Hi.
So glad you're here. And I hear that your husband is going to join you too. That's great.
Yeah, I would love for him to join me, but he ran away. Colin, come. Colin. Yeah. Okay. So
if he does, it's great. If not, it's great. Folks,
yeah. He'll be here, in a few minutes, but I think he went upstairs. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to introduce you. Can you see your microphone? Just get mute on that.
Yeah, I don't hear you very clearly. You know, it just stops and goes. And stop. What's wrong with that? Like your voice. Oops. Are we there? I can't hear.
Can you mute her, please?
Okay.
Hey, Slim. So I am going to introduce Latifa Woodhouse, who's here with us. She lives on Long Island as part of the Shelter Rock UU congregation there. And Latifa has been doing very powerful work for a number of trips now to Greece to work with the current immigration crisis. We were just talking about the movie about Wade Still and Martha Sharp, who were doing this kind of work in another immigration crisis. But Latifa, can you hear me? And can you describe, you've been going to Greece? Is that where you've been going? Slim, she's muted now because I asked you to mute her. Hold on. You're muted right now. Slim, can you unmute her? No, you're muted.
I'm sorry, folks. I am trying to figure out how to unmute, and I've never actually hit the unmute button before.
Just hit the mute again. It's the same button.
Yeah, that's not working, weirdly.
Oh, no, don't tell me that. Sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those days when Google on the Air is not our friend, let's just say. Huh. Latifa, we see you. We can't hear a word you're saying, so just look beautiful. We're going to figure this out.
Joanna and I were just talking about the havoc that Mercury in retrograde causes. This is just a part of it.
Yeah, I'm even trying right click, and gotta say, it's just not working.
Well, rats. That's not good. Well, now she's gone. So we're excited that Latifa's going to talk about some of the current work that Unitarian Universalists are doing with immigrants and people who would like to be immigrants who are in refugee camps and other places. But meanwhile, while we figure that out, we were talking about how it was for the Sharps to get back home. And Joanna, you were talking about Brangelina.
Oh, yeah, about the fact that here you have just this week, just this unrelenting flow of story after story of people being killed. And what is the news talking all about? To celebrities and why they're getting divorced. And, you know, just that feeling of like there's two different dimensions going on at the same time, and I'm living in one and other people are living in another.
I had to wonder what it was like in their church when they went back. I had to wonder how, if the church people were like, look, you can talk about that every 2 months, but don't get boring with it, you know. And
you're so obsessed about this.
Yeah, how we hold these multiple realities.
Well, remember, Artemis said his father never talked about it, that he never preached about it. So it was, I wonder if it was like an immediate, people didn't react well, and then he, you know, maybe got burned after tried preaching on it once, or was it so painful? I don't know. That I thought was interesting.
I did too. And of course, both Wade Still and Martha were very active in civil rights and other international and national issues for the rest of their lives. So they clearly talked about things. But yeah, I think it is that hard when you can see something that other people have the privilege not to see. That it's always a balancing act, isn't it?
And when people don't want to see it, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Latifa, I'm hoping she'll come back.
The movie overall, there were so many, you know, what a mix of emotions. I have to say, having my, you know, I was watching it with my 85-year-old Unitarian mom and my daughters, and, you know, definitely having those moments where, like, you know, they talked about Chopek. And I was like, Chopek, you know, you've heard me talk about him before, and flower communion, and look, they're talking about him. And that's, you know, that feeling of, oh, wow, someone, you know, people from outside our tribe are hearing about this, you know, was very exciting. And oh, I saw one of my colleagues said something about watching it and getting really furious with Frederick Elliott for what he did, you know, in kind of manipulating them to go back. And it's, you know, our historical, you know, forebears were human too, very, very human.
Well, I'm curious about that part of it. I want to do a little digging and find out. We had a forum online last night to talk about the movie, and one of the people said she read all of that Wade Still and Elliot had worked out a deal that Martha hadn't been included in. That isn't what they said. So if that, you know, so it's possible that that's true. But what they said was neither of them wanted to go back, but especially she didn't want to go back. Of course, they didn't have to. So, you know, somebody was talking about how they were badgered into going. I said, well, clearly 17 people didn't feel badgered into going because they said no. And yeah, it's interesting. And so, you know, I had an online discussion about would I have gone, which is sort of beside the point, but anyway, still an interesting thing to wonder, because I'm physically not very brave. I'm brave with words, I'm brave in other ways, but physically, but then someone said something I thought was really profound, is you don't know what you'll rise to until it comes. And I thought the really frightening things that I have done in my life, I certainly didn't sit in a room by myself and decide I wanted to do them. The moment came and I didn't have a choice. I just had to do it because of someone I loved or something else. And I have a feeling that's often how such moments come to people. It's how it came to Moses, right?
Yeah, but I think one of the real challenges in this, you know, it's the same thing as like the story of Viola Liuzzo, is it's one thing to sacrifice yourself, but like if you have young children, you are sacrificing something. You are sacrificing something pretty big for them or of them. And that was, you know, that's something as a mom that I have really struggled with, because, you know, getting to know, you know, through Facebook and all, Viola's daughters, and knowing that this, in many ways, really kind of ruined their lives. Boy, that's a hard thing to struggle with.
Well, I think any parent who's devoting their life to the common good, which I hope we all are in one way or another, we're doing that in some ways at the expense of children. In another way, we're showing children what life is for. I think about my neighbors when I lived here in DC, and this wonderful couple across the street, and the man, his niece was going to die unless she got a new liver, so he donated half of his liver, and the big half, you know, the little half isn't that big of a deal. But he was in the ICU for months. And I remember his daughter said to her mother, his wife, why couldn't someone else be a hero? I don't want a hero, I want a daddy, you know? And I thought, right, that's always what every kid's going to want, you know? And yet it's, whatever your gender, we're always choosing about, do we stay at home or do we care for the world? You know, as Pastor Danny always says, there are no other people's children. So we're all wrestling with that one way or another, right? But this is pretty extreme. Yeah. Aisha, what do you think religious educators will do with that movie? What age do you think?
So I think I'm the only Unitarian who hasn't seen it. I will see it, I promise. There's been a lot going on at the church. But I was telling Joanna before we came on air, the Wait Still and Martha's story has been in Tapestry of Faith since the beginning for 5th graders. So I already, you know, was part of creating that part of the curriculum when I was at the UUA. And so I know that it's already in Tapestry for 4th and 5th graders. So I'm not sure how young you could probably go pretty young. I don't think the film is graphic necessarily. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen it, but the processing part is the big part, is the discussion about what we do. And actually, once Latifah comes back, this is happening in real time. You know, how many of us I didn't get on a plane to go to Lesbos, and along with Latifah, Reverend Bob Janice Dillon, who is currently in England, who's a Unitarian minister, has also been to Greece. And he posted about that quite often. But you know, we process, we tell stories, and we process, and Tapestry of Faith is rich. It's a UUA online curriculum. It has all our stories. It does. It has all the people that you haven't heard of, you know, stories that most people don't know. And the challenge now, or the invitation, is to use the stories and to lift them up. So we, you know, as Artemis was saying, settings. My church has already emailed me a few times. Hey, Aisha, what do you want?
Hello.
Okay. Latifah.
Hi, Latifah.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me now?
Yes, and we're not going to let you mute again. So tell us, you've been to Greece. Tell us your story. We're going to mute everything else and get that phone turned off.
Okay, is the phone off? The phone is off now. Can you hear me? Excellent, wonderful. Okay, so what do I tell you the story? How do we start our journey, right?
Tell us the story about your decision to go overseas.
Well, as you know, 10 years ago, just to relate it to this wonderful, amazing movie, we saw this movie defying the Nazis, the Shark War, was called The Hero of the Spirits, and I was, Colin and I were serving as the regional coordinator for the service committee, and we saw it there, and we thought, wow, these are our Unitarian Universalist minister and his wife. They did this heroic work. They went to World War II. So how could we sit still and not do something of, you know, social justice related and humanity related? So both Colin and I reached out in many different ways with many different causes, like Katrina, you know, Sandy, and of course through our congregation, we do a lot of social justice work. And we work with immigration, and you know, as you know, our big General Assembly was in Arizona. So I was always concerned. Plus, being a daughter of refugee, I know exactly my mother, father, grandmother, who was at the time 77 years old, with 15 brothers and sisters, came to this country as refugees. And the life that they endure and the hardship that they had, they were all living in one little tiny room in Pakistan, in Karachi, Pakistan, and their skin was totally shutting when they were there from the heat and the bugs and all of that stuff. So I know what it is like. But when really what motivated me to go to Greece, both Colin and I, was when we saw Alan Kurdi washed to the shore of Turkey, you know, in September, October, was it? Yeah, it was October. And I said, wait a minute, this is really, you know, something of a massive crisis that we have not seen since World War II. We must do something. So I went to my congregation, being on the, you know, social justice committee and being on the board. I drew a petition, and the board unanimously voted for. We took it to the congregation. The congregation passed it. We passed $200,000. 100 went to USC, and 100 went to a group called SAM, Syrian medical professional in the border of Syria and Yemen. And that still did not say, we, you know, arranged meetings to our congregation with Chuck Schumer and many other, you know, government people, but that didn't stop us. Colin was saying, we must go there ourselves. And, you know, of course, we didn't have the means to really support the refugees, but we had the means to travel on our own and pay for our own hotel and stuff like that. So my kids came into help, and they were wonderful. As young, you know, adult children, I have 5 of them, and they did fundraising, and they did through CrowdRise, raised about $16,000 in a matter of 3 weeks for us. And we took that $16,000 with a doctor from our congregation, Diane Lombardi, you know, as a team to go there and help. And my other daughter, who was very well connected with Patagonia, you know, they got 12 boxes of Patagonia brand new jackets to take to the refugees. So we took that with us and we went there with $16,000. It was an incredible, massive crisis that what we observed. You know, I'm lucky to speak Arabic, Pashto, Farsi, and Pashto and Farsi are my native languages, but Arabic I speak a little bit and read and write, and Urdu. And that gave me a way, really an insight to their stories, to what these people were going through. In the matter of 3 weeks, I probably met and spoke to 2,000 people individually and crowds. I mean, Camp Moria, Colin got us in through a Health Point Clinic, which is based in London, their headquarters, and they were there on the ground. Originally, they were in the compound in Camp Moria, which is the largest camp in Greece, and all the refugees from everywhere. When they arrive, then they ship them to Camp Moria for registration and for the process they go through. They're there for 3 to 4 days. After that, they send them. This was in January and February. They were sending them to Europe. And the two countries that were accepting them was Germany and Sweden. And you know, we were giving them hopes. Colin got involved with a lot of construction worked with all the refugees, got them involved, built steps in Camp Moria, called steps. First he said steps to heaven, then he said, no, that's too much. We'll call it steps to Europe, you know. So these guys, men, women, children, yeah, of course, they had incredible, you know, heart-wrenching stories, but they were determined, they were hopeful, they wanted to go, and we gave them the money hand in hand, face to face, because we supported them with firewood, with food, with clothing, and also with their tickets to Macedonia. So that was how we supported and helped. And we met a lot of other great organizations from Europe that they were working, like Team Humanity of Denmark, ACT Sweden. There was another group, IMU, which is United States and Sweden, got together, a gentleman from California and a lady from Sweden. So it was a lot of wonderful, amazing people. My daughter Alexandra went with us, and she was very helpful, and it was a great time in terms of helping and reaching out to these people and giving them hope. But what happened was in March 20th, when the EU closed its doors on them, first on the Afghans and then on the, you know, Syrian, then all the violence you know, started, because people cannot tolerate the condition. This time in August, we went there again. My other daughter, Sarah from California, and my son, Evan, here from New York City, they both went with us. It was a horrific situation. We went to 7 military camps, visited, helped them, provided them with food. We saw all kinds of conditions, scorpions running around, snakes running around, the heat 120 Fahrenheit. And these people, I mean, if you go in, they're still very, very incredibly hospitable, and invited us to their little tent in the heat, and would make us tea, and would spread the tablecloth with all the goodies, whatever they had. You know, the UN would give them these bars and these juices, and they would be offering it to us. I mean, talk about hospitality, talk about generosity. It was incredible. But what's not good, the conditions for their kids, especially we went to 3 different places: Chios Island, Lesbos Island, and also Thessaloniki. The Yazidis were really suffering because they have been you know, tortured, as you know, by ISIS. And there was one camp, there were 1,400 Yazidis, and 700 were children. And these children were without shoes, beautiful, amazing. I mean, I have their pictures, you know, blonde, blue eyes. You couldn't even figure out where and my friend, come here, my friend. And they would hold your hand, and on each arm, there would be like 7, 8 kids. And then they would take us to their tents, and the mother would say, take them with you, please take them, save their lives. You know, we are in this atrocity, but they don't have to die here. They don't have to starve here. It was really, really something I have never, ever seen. And it was a great insight for my adult children to really firsthand feel and be in touch with, you know, these kids, and play with them and share whatever they had for them, the markers, the crayons, the soccer balls and, you know, just to get engaged. But the most heart-wrenching for me was I found my cousin that I left about 40 years ago. She was 2 years old. Now she's 42 in a camp in Chios with her doctor husband that she has married after I've gone. I've been living here for 40 years, and her 2 young children, one 9 years old and one 5 years old. And that was, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. We cried for hours. We took them out of the camp to our hotel. We stayed with them. We supported them with whatever we can. But there was no way we can get them out because it is worse than a prison. I mean, she told me at night they can't sleep. They're just sitting like this in a camp, one tent, 50 young men in her own family of 2 kids and one husband and wife. And the reason they left, I asked the story, was because the Taliban were after her husband. They were saying that you are practicing the devil medicine, you are a doctor, so they were going to, you know, kill him. He was on the list, and that's why they escaped. First, they were stuck in Turkey for many, many, many months. They had paid about $7,000 to the smuggler. That didn't work for them. They were living on the street in Turkey. Then they finally, the sister from Germany sent them more money, she said, and they got another $4,000 for the people to get them to Chios, the island of Chios in Greece. So, but that's like a minor story. I've seen people who have lost their loved one. You know, the Syrian ladies would cry on my shoulder and say, "Tell President Obama, what have we done wrong? I had a house as a castle. I had a car, a BMW, everything. The bombs came and took them away and took my husband. I don't have a husband. You know, I'm running for the life of my children, and I've been here for 8 months. And look at my skin. I mean, it was just, Megan, what can I tell you? What can I tell? It's just, it really is heartbreaking. So it's pretty bad. At the time we were there, this one camp called Harasu in Thessaloniki, they went on a 9 days food strike because you know, that's something the UN has to consider and be aware of. I have gone to the United Nations many times. I have voiced their concern. They say, oh, in September we have this conference, or this will happen. This was in March when I went there, right after my first trip. But the people, you know, are not getting what UN should be giving them. For example, food. The lines were like miles for a cup of soup or little noodles. In the catering, they said we don't eat that. They told me, look, smell it. You know, it was like dry, yucky noodles with some kind of something on it. I don't know, and it's all packaged. And these people, you know, first of all, they are religious. They have their own, you know, they don't know what's in the food. Second, they don't like that kind of food. So what Colin and I did with this time, you know, we raised about $5,000 again through our children's help and through our donors. And we took that, we bought oil, rice, tea, sugar, sauces, and beans. And then, luckily, because this camp had a strike and people were really hungry and losing a lot of weight, there is an organization called Al Khair in England, and it's a Muslim organization. And they brought 2 trailers to the camp and outside of the camp. And they were, you know, any food that you donated, you would give it to them. They would cook their food, and then the people would come and get their rice and their beans from that source. Then we went to another camp. It was 4,000 people that we worked with them. We delivered a lot of clothes, shoes, and food again. And then we went and visited parks. The parks were full of people from Afghanistan, from Syria, living on the streets, on the sidewalks. We were harassed by the police. We had a special meeting with the police general, with all these 17 police on their motorcycles, and the people were crying to me that, look, my wife is dying right now. She has cancer, and they're kicking us out. We're just the reason. And the police said, well, tell them that, why don't they go to the camp? They said, we lived 8 months in Athens. It was worse than any prison we've ever been. There was no fresh air. There were bugs. There's no food. At least if we come to the outside, we breathe the fresh air, and people come and help us like you guys. You know, they give us some food. You know, we see some other people. Look how we have met a woman from our country with our language. You know, they were all over me, like calling me auntie, auntie, we love you. oh, can you take us to America? Please take us. People were giving me their little babies. You know, a baby was 2 months old and say, please put it in your suitcase. You know, my baby needs to live. It doesn't matter what happens to me. There were elderly people in their 70s, in their 80s. It's just, it's, well, you know, I mean, how could I? So for all of that said, I think we have got work to do. That's why Colin and I were both after, you know, we worked with the USC, we brought all the information back to them, and I'm very happy that they created this toolkit, and they also are, you know, trying to find partners, because we really, I mean, every congregation that Colin and I have gone, or the Jewish synagogues or the mosques, they have said, what can we do? How could we help, you know? And there are people willing. America is a wonderful place. There are a lot of good people, but we have to educate them. We have to talk to them. There are a lot of wonderful Unitarians. In one of the church, a lady who was 92-year-old, a Unitarian, she came to me, she said, I want to go with you. I want to do that work, you know? So there are wonderful people out there, but our job is to create that education. Thank you for what you're doing, you know, to get the word to the ears of everyone, and to stand together united, and to make the social justice and social action work that we have got happen.
Latifah, can I ask you what it was? 2 questions. What it was like for you to leave and come back to the States? What was, in other words, what was it like for you to re-enter Long Island? I'm from the Metro New York area, so I know Long Island well, and to leave all that suffering and then go back to Long Island where, you know, people complain about coffee and traffic.
Great question. It hurts my heart, to be honest with you, because the disparity is so great, and it bothers me, you know, when people say, oh, come on, Latifah, stop talking. We have our own problems. We have homeless on Long Island. What are you talking about? There is no comparison. There is nothing like that. So, but I've heard that a lot, you know, so I'm kind of used. But whenever I go there, to be honest with you, I'm on the high note of my life, and I feel like I want to be there. I don't want to come back here, because at least I could translate for them. I could, you know, by my translation with the police general and the police people, they were able to stay there. They didn't kick them out because they understood. I explained to them. So you need that. That's why at that time I thought to myself, and I spoke to Colin and a good friend of mine who's a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. She's Afghan American, that we must create translation for humanity. It's so important that we have translators for these people. That is more important than anything else, because they need the language skills and also to understand their culture, to see who they are. When I was in Camp Moria, through these volunteer camp, that we would be giving clothes and shoes. All these wonderful people from England, from Sweden would say, wait a minute, they are gypsies, they're thieves. We gave them clothes before, they're selling them downstairs. And the lady would cry to me and say, no, they don't understand my language. It was not my size. Here, I have the shoes back for you. You are speaking my language. You understand. You gave me my size. I'm not taking clothes from them. See, that kind of misunderstanding have to be clarified, and we must do that job to provide translation. That's what I want to ask you, USC. Translations, translators are very important, and also lawyers are very important right now. They play a big role because of the legal problems that these people, like for example, my cousin, she's been 8 months in this camp and living the horrific life. She was in Turkey for 6 months and she's gotten nowhere. And in all our sisters, you know, we're all living here in America, in Germany, in Sweden, because we have come long ago. But here she's suffering because of what goes on with the EU and what's going on in the military camp situation. I mean, I went and visited an Afghan camp way on top of a hill, far away from any human. And they would walk for miles and miles just to get some food, but they are not allowed. It was like a dead place. And once they heard that I was there, I talked to their soldiers standing at the door with their guns and everything. And I said, I'm from Afghanistan. I want to visit some of these people. And it was ironic that the people that came and they just hugged me and crowded me, and they were people who knew my dad, who knew my cousin, because my dad was a big imam in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and my cousin, and they said, oh my God, we were his parishioner. You are the daughter. I mean, it's a small world. But they were like in tears. Can you please take us with you? Can you? So my heart goes, and I'm sorry that the people here don't understand that. But this movie, the Sharps movie that was shown the other night, and also the work that we have got to do as Unitarian Universalists, and right now there's a movement, and I thank Artemis Tchaikovsky for doing this, because 10 years ago when he and I would talk, he says, Latifah, one of the goals I have, I want to put the UU faith on the map, and I want to show the world what the Sharps did, we could all do. We could walk in their shoes. And, you know, so this is a great thing that's happening in our country right now. I hope it catches fire and we all stand up together and stand up for the refugees.
Latifah,
yeah, go ahead.
how is your congregation engaged now that you're back to Shelter Rock? Are people in the congregation jumping into this with you?
Well, not when I came back, but now with you know how our congregation is. Let's face it, our congregation is very executive and very, you know, money, and status. Right now, with Ned White being the, you know, interim minister, and Natalie Fenimore being the RE minister, and also this movie that Ken Burns took over, that it's in the New York Times, you know, and this person is writing, Nicholas Kristof is writing, and this is, so because they are from that kind of mindset, people, they're intellectual, they're nice, but they're the money and the Long Island people, like she said it. So therefore, right now it's like, wow, this is really happening, you know, the refugees. So there's attention. Like the movie was a big hit. The movie was really a big hit. And, you know, now they're paying attention to me, they're paying attention to Colin, and they're paying attention to my children in our work. But still, you know, we still got, you know, Megan, we have work to do. And there are strong forces there that we got to kind of be, you know, working with them and educating them and standing together. You know, what I loved that night for all the people, except the hardcore were not there. They didn't even come, the one that are fighting this movement and all that. But we were, as a congregation, together. The middle people were involved in this work, and I was very happy, and I just wrote them a long thank you note.
Talking about going to the White House to see the movie, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you know, I'm talking about when they thought, well, the White House paid attention to this, the Holocaust Museum paid attention, the New York Times, the CNN. So, you know, okay, Shelter Rock will be at that level and will pay attention to this. And they have promised me that there will be more work done in October. We're going to invite Tom Andrews, and there's going to be another, because I told Ned and I told the board, this should not end just with this movie. We have to continue the dialogue, and we got to pour money into it. You know, I was laughing to Artemis. I said, you know, now the UUSC should ask for $20 million and pour it all into these camps, you know, because it's the right time. And it's the time that the United Nations is talking about, our president is talking about. So, you know, in Shelter Rock, as you know, there are great people there too, but there's also very corporate people there. So it depends on how you get those corporate people's mind to understand the pain and the suffering that these refugees are going through.
Well, your stories, I believe all three of the mothers on this show with you were crying when you talked about women with their babies.
Well, thank you.
Telling those personal stories is so important, so that it's not refugees, it's your cousin, it's people.
Exactly. Yeah, people. I mean, they all look, honestly, everyone that I talked to, they had my sister's name, they had my cousin's name, they had my brother's name, you know, and they look like us. We all look alike, you know, it's wonderful. It is such a warming feeling for me. I have never, to be honest with you, I said, you know, this is my religion. My religion is service, and I love to be there and be with them. And if I could make just a little difference in their life, you know, I feel great about it. And I couldn't sleep. I did not sleep for 3 weeks. At night, I would come home like at 12 o'clock, and all I would do is write back about it. And, you know, my mind is, until today, I mean, I hear right now Camp Moria, the steps that Colin built there, you know, with all the workers of the, you know, you got the refugees involved, the volunteers involved. They built beautiful steps. My daughter painted it green, yellow, blue, and it was, you know, for the people who couldn't really walk and all that. They just burned them, the whole thing. The camp was burned. And the reason it was burned, because people lived there for 8-9 months. They're not going anywhere. The heat is incredible. You know, I mean, August it was 120 Fahrenheit, and you know, it's there day after day. There were young men. If my son told a story at UU, this was a streamline the UU congregation of community, about a young man. I mean, there were a lot of young men I saw, 20, 22. They day and night is the same. All thank God to these cell phones that they have. And they are learning their English that way. They're communicating with the world that way. Otherwise, they would probably commit suicide, because these are intelligent, young, educated people who their country was bombarded by bombs, by, you know, this atrocity, and they have lost everything. And they're now at the mercy of these military camps, and they can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. There's no jobs. There's no education. Education is a key. You know, why can't we provide schools for them? Why can't we do things? The volunteers are a lot better than the big organization that have with lots of money. That's what my request from the USC is. We could really work on programming. You know, maybe we'll take 2 or 3 camps and provide them with schools, provide them with translators, provide them, you know, slowly but surely we can make a difference. The UUs have to be there, because I saw other religions, you know, there were the Catholics, there were the Episcopalians, but there were no UUs as a UU. You know, of course, I'm sure there's other UUs beside me who have gone as individuals, but we must create that front.
So if there is someone who has been watching the movie of Defying the Nazis and says, okay, I'm free, I can do this, I'm ready to hop on a plane, where do they go? What do they do? Who do they talk to?
A good question. Right now, we're working with the USC. They have found another partner called the Lighthouse. We went and visited them, okay? The Lighthouse will screen them, will give them application, and then fill in the space. We also, Colin and I, on our own, identify different organizations that we know, that I know firsthand. One is IMU, they're in the north of Athens, and the other one is the Team Humanity for Denmark, they're in Thessaloniki. Act Sweden is in Lesbos. So it's difficult from here, but it's not that difficult when you go there and you connect and you know. The volunteers are always welcome, but you're right, we need an organized program for them. Like the Lighthouse is very organized, and UUSC did a lot of you know, search in findings and finally connected with them. So if a person wants to go, first of all, they could, you know, call us, and, you know, and we could run them through our process of, you know, connect them with our teams that we have there on the ground. And we are also going, again, you know, to work with these teams and help them and get to those camps. And the other way is to call UUSC and to say, you know, when are they really officially starting? I know they started the relationship because Pamela Spar wrote to me and said, here, this is the you know, organization, they've been working on it. In September, we're going to start putting people out there if they are interested. But so they could call the UUSC and ask them to connect them to Lighthouse.
Latifah, are you going back? Do you have plans?
Yeah, we want to go back, Colin and I and my children, 2 of my children, and Artemis, sometime hopefully in November or December, and that we're planning. Right now, the plans have not been, you know, really worked on, because we just finished, first of all, we finished the trip to Greece, and then my daughter got married in Banff, Canada, and then I came here to promote the movie. So we had 3 successful weeks in New York City, and, you know, it was promotion in Los Angeles, in Chicago, everywhere. And now that the 20th, that was finished, so we're going on a little vacation, my husband and I, to Mallorca, Spain, in October, and that first week. But then after that, we're still in touch with, you know, I have my very good friend Arzo Wardag, who's right now there in Chios working with people, and she's helping a group of lawyers that win. You know, this is again a human rights lawyers from Manhattan, and they pay these interns like Arzo to take them as translators with them. You know, so if these organizations could do, and in the, you know, I talked to the lawyers, and they don't have much money. They put their own money or whatever the organization, they fundraise a little bit, and they send these wonderful young Afghan American or Arab American, you know, young people with them. They take them, give them a scholarship of paying their way, paying a little stipend, and they go and they translate, and then the cases can move quickly with the UN and through the, you know, EU, and get those people out as soon as we can get them out. But it looks like they're going to be there at least for a year and a half. You know, things were not moving when we were there. It was very, very slow. And people were pretty frustrated, and especially when it comes to young men. There were violence, you know, even in Chios. I mean, the stories that my cousin told me, that these young men from her tent, they go to the near, you know, they drink, alcohol is allowed, you know, and they get drunk and they fight each other, and they throw in the camp, you know, the chairs at each other, shoes at each other. She says it's just like a disaster that I've never seen, you know, and that's why they put fire to the other camp. You know, there's 4,000 people living in that camp, in Camp Moria. They put fire to it. So now we're doing fundraising from here, from America, to my friend Arzo and other friends that I have on the ground there, to put these people in some kind of homes and also give them some food for at least a month or two.
So if you could wave a magic wand over every UU congregation to take action, what action would you want them to take?
Well, I didn't hear that last part. It's again, the computer's not. What did you say? I'm sorry. If I were to take action,
if every UU congregation we're going to take one action now,
right?
What would you encourage that to be? What would you think our congregation should be doing?
I think, you know what, if we all as UU act together and stand up for refugees, and each congregation, let's say, adopt a family, or say, I'm going to place one family in my house, I think we would make a big difference. Big difference. I'm talking about around the country, you know, because Charlie Clement just called me. I met him, I saw him at the congressional luncheon for the movie, and he and I talked, and he is one of the, I mean, I have lots of respect. He's a good friend. He was the president of USC, you know, Charlie Clement. And in his congregation in Durango, Colorado, they had meetings right after that movie. And he said, there's a synagogue, there's a UU church, and then there's another church. They want to adopt 3 families. So he was asking me, what would I recommend? How should they go about it? And all of that. So if we do, there's many families there, and we have to still work through some kind of resettlement organization, which UU Rise is doing that right now. And UU Rise, Dan Straka happens to be a very close friends. I mean, Colin and I got married in his backyard. I don't know if you know the story, but that's how far we go. So he is the head of UU Rise, and he has his resettlement organization in San Diego. And there are many other resettlement organizations. We got to work as UUs together to bring these refugees, the Syrian, the Afghan, you know, one family at a time if we can. And you know, maybe my congregation will accept 1 or 2. The other congregation is, you know, that makes a big difference. That gives freedom in life. Like, I met these survivors, and I met their children, and I've been very good friends with some of them. You know, the potentiality that Ken Burns talks about. If we would have let those 6 million Jews, imagine what this country would be. If we let these Syrians, I mean, they're so bright. These Afghans, they're so intelligent. These Afghan women, you know, I mean, I was like taken away. I've been away from the country for 40 years. These were well-educated women sleeping right with a little blanket on the street, in so much like women's rights kind of people. And I'm thinking, my heart breaks for you, but I wish I could take you with me. You know, America would be beautiful if we bring them all here. So we got to work together, Megan. We got work to do.
Thank you. That's great parting words for our show. We really appreciate your work, Latifah, you and your family on all of our behalf. And you inspire me to figure out what I can help to do for one family. Because if everybody had one family, that would be a lot of families we could help.
Absolutely, yes.
Next week, we're going to have Black Lives of UU with us, talking about other moral courage. And we look forward to that. Latifah, thank you so much for coming. Joanna and Aisha and Slim behind the chalice, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nice talking to you, Aisha, and nice talking to you, Megan. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Good to see you, Latifah.
Yeah, come on
my
over.
friend.
Yeah.
Oh, soon.
Love you all. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Love you.
Bye-bye.